Hi guys, welcome to today's lesson. Today we are going to look at a book that's called Teaching Online, a practical guide, third edition, and we are going to discuss the chapter 7 of that particular book. That's students' activities in online environment. So as I said earlier, this particular book or this PowerPoint is adapted from Teaching Online, a practical guide, third edition by Susan Cole and Steve Rossen. So let's just get straight to our lesson for today. Now, when developing an online classroom, it is very important to find instructional activities that are most effective for an online or blended course. And that's why in this chapter we are going to talk about some rules and guidelines that will help us find the most effective and suitable activities for our students. We'll also look at some concrete activities which some instructors have found to be effective, and if it's been effective for them, I'm pretty sure it's going to be effective for us as well. So let's get straight to it. The first activity is group activities. That's number one, group activities. Now, group activities a good and an obvious strategy for a large online class, as well as a class of about 15 to 20 students. Group activity may range from mostly informal small groups to group discussions to a highly structured and scripted arrangements. To organize a group activities, you need to provide guidelines for each group's collaboration. After that, you have to set reasonable goals and objectives, and you need to provide both place for the group meeting and then the presentation as well. This often depends on the management system that you are using and the collaborative tool that you are using. The next thing is detailed guidelines for responsibilities. It is vital to provide detailed guidelines on the responsibilities of each member, as well as explained detailed explanation on how groups are to proceed with their tasks. So when you do that, some of the responsibilities that you can assign to the group members include a group leader, group recorder of activities, group spokesperson, and so on and so forth. You can even have group secretary, and more roles can be added depending on the number of people that you have in a particular group. It is also very necessary to define clearly the end product of the project and the method that they are going to use, the method of presentation. So you have to let them know that at the end of the product, this at the end of the project, this is what they are supposed to do, or this is what they are supposed to present. And you also have to allow them to present their project to you. Still on the group activities, we are talking about ice-breaking activities. This is an activity that allows students to form some sense of community in the online classroom. and we do so by using a discussion forum. So every online classroom should have a discussion forum which the students can use to introduce themselves in the classroom. So they start by maybe informally introduce themselves, they mention the names, and they say one or two stuff about them. The requirement of the discussion forum should be simple. You don't have to expect so much from them, since it's just the introductory discussion or introductory forum. So for example, you can ask them to mention their names and then tell us what they expect from this particular course, and that will allow students to communicate with each other and then also get to know each other more. Another point is that the questions should be specific and straightforward. Now this is so because when they are new to the platform, some of them tend to hold back, because when a question is asked and it's ambiguous, they don't know whether answering that particular question they are crossing some borders, or some boundaries, or they are going beyond what is expected of them. So you have to keep the questions specific and straightforward. When it's the question is specific and straightforward, they will know that they can answer the question without thinking about crossing any boundaries whatsoever. Again, you can allow the students to upload their pictures during the introduction of themselves. You can allow them to upload their pictures, but the upload of pictures in some cultures, it's prohibited. So it's not advisable to make it compulsory. It's not advisable to make it compulsory. You can allow them if they want to, fine. If not, you shouldn't force them, and you should also allow them to add avatars. Maybe they want to use some icons, some pictures in place of them. You should also allow that. So now let's see how you can divide students into groups. Now the first point is time zone. So if you are dealing with students from different time zones, then time zone becomes very, very important, or it becomes a major factor. You might want to keep students from the same time zone in one group, and that will help in the meetings and then in the discussions and even in the presentations, because if different students from different time zones are in a group, then it will cause some problems for them. The next point is students with different characteristics and skills. So that talks about for example, different characteristics. We have maybe males and females. If you might not want to group males in one group and then females in another group, you might want to mix them so that it also helps in the discussion. And then with skills, let's say for example, students with some students are very fluent in communication wise, they are very fluent. Others, they have very relatively weak communication skills. So you might want to mix them so that those who are very fluent and those who have very good communication skills will end up pulling those with relatively weak communication skills. They'll pull them along during the learning process. Now, the next point is considering students in interest area. Now, at some point in time, it's okay to put students having the same interest area in one group. At a point too, it's not really good, because some students, they tend to relax in their comfort zone and don't want to learn further, but when they are put in a different place, when they are given a different and a new thing to research on, then they learn more. So you should consider that as well. The next one is size and duration of the group. That's another factor to consider. So you don't have to make the groups too large. Group members varies based on the task, but for a group that is meant for just discussion, you can make the members up to like maybe 10 members. But when there is going to be a collaboration on assignments and project works, with that one, then maybe 4 to 5 members is should be the optimum size. The number, if the numbers are greater, are more than 5, then you tend to have problems with communication and organization and so on and so forth. So if there is going to be collaboration and analysis, then the optimum size should be maybe 4 to 5 members per group. Yeah, still on dividing students into groups, the next point you should consider is group roles. So you need to assign every role. You need to assign roles to every member of the group, just as I mentioned earlier on. But this time around, you have to rotate the roles so that every member would have a chance at different roles. They get to play different roles in the same group. But we should also be mindful of the frequency with which we do the rotation. If we do that so frequent, then it tends to interfere with the group continuity. So in as much as we are rotating for the students to have a feel of every role, we should also be mindful of how frequent we rotate the roles for the group. The next point, okay, so the rotation may depend on the length of the course. Being if the course duration is long, then you can do the rotation more, but if it's short, then maybe 2 or 3 rotations will be enough for the course. The next point is supervision and assessment. Now, supervision and assessment talks about the instructor not leaving everything for the students to do. You should supervise them, you should regulate them. Now when you do that, the students all the students will participate, because they know that even you are participating, how much more them, so they will all end up participating in the group. That's supervision and assessment. Group assessments, the assessment of the group can be done in 3 ways. The first one is the instructor assessing all member participation. That is one. The next one is the group will come and present in class, and then the entire class will assess the group on their performance. And then the last one is the instructor can assign members to assess every group that comes and then present. Now that is going to be based on a well-defined criteria. They are not going to assess them on their own discretion. The instructor is going to provide a well-defined criteria for assessment so that they will follow and then do the assessment. Alright, so we are moving on to the next activity, which is role play and simulation. Role play and simulation. So online role play can be carried out in small groups with each member taking a role. So example happens in it probably happens in all the disciplines, but then these are a few examples in like human resource, history, teaching practice, and so on and so forth. For example, history, when you want to check on recall on a particular history, you can just assign roles of individuals that are in the history. You can assign roles to different members or students for them to play that role, and then you assess them. So that's all about online role playing. This makes the entire learning process more concrete, and it helps build experience relating to the real world. Right. So still on online role playing and simulation, we're going to talk about online debates. So with online debates, we it also helps a lot by pairing students and giving them topics to prepare on and argue their points out. Or students can be divided into groups. So pairing the students and giving them topics, either maybe one-on-one, or you can put the students into groups, with each group doing their research and then consultation necessary for the presentation. And then each group is going to pick a spokesperson who will argue or debate the other group's spokesperson. The next one is you have to create a rubric for the debate. Every stage or every argument, every stage of the argument, you have a rubric that is going to be used to evaluate the debate. The next one is you, the instructor, you have to moderate the debate. So you should moderate the debate to tell each group when there is a contradicting point, and where there is a clarification, you come in, you give that clarification, because it's a learning process, so you can't allow your students to be giving false information. You come in when there is something contradicting, or when there is a wrong information, you come in, you correct, and then they all learn like that. In order for role playing to work online, students need to be given the information or scripts necessary to play the role, or they need to be directed to research the relevant materials. So you don't just assign the roles to them and leave them. You give them time, you give them information, or you can even write a script for them. Go and learn the script and come and act, or come and play the role. Or you can guide them, go to this website, go here, do this, look for this, search for this, and they do all that, they prepare, and then they come and play the role. You also need to provide adequate guide and time for the students to do their research. You don't just give it to them today and you tell them tomorrow they should come and play or they should come and act. No, you have to give them time to research, and then you guide them through the research too as well. The next one is adequate preparation. As I said, give them time to research, give them time to prepare, because if they prepare and come, everything will go on well. You don't give it to them today and then you tell them tomorrow they should come and play the role. No, you have to give them adequate time to prepare. One key success of role playing and simulation is adequate preparation. They need to understand the concept. So you, as I said earlier, you have to give them adequate time to prepare, for them to research on the subject matter, the role they are playing, and then you also give them instructions as to it. Now, after the role play, you have to reflect on it. So reflecting on the role play is equally important, since it provides students with experiences and allows them to integrate what they've learned into an assignment or a project or anything that they are asked to do. Now, the next activity we are going to talk about is computer-based simulations and animation. Computer-based simulations and animation. Now, simulations, they attempt to recreate, they are activities that attempt to recreate an actual process or activity or model a complex real life circumstances. So that's basically simulation. And animations, they use simple representations like cartoons, drawings, illustrations, to show processes, how things work, perspective, ideas, so depict a role or something. So that's basically animation. Now, for all sort of simulations, whether low tech or high tech, it is advisable to provide the following. Now, the first thing that you have to provide is introduction of the simulation. The second thing is an initiating scenario. The third thing is a clearly defined rules, because with the participants, they need to know the rules and what is expected of them, and they have to research on them and then they prepare. So you have to clearly define their rules for them. The next point is timeout periods. There need to be some stoppage times for them to relax, to take a breath, and come back again. Yes, so there also need to be timeout periods. The next point is debriefing exercise at the end. Now this is very important because it allows the students to it allows them to get the results. They know the results, and then they get the experiences that they got from the simulations. They discuss it. They know how to apply them in real life situations. They know how to apply them in their project. So debriefing exercise at the end of the simulation is very, very important. You don't just do the simulation and then tell your students you dismiss your students or you tell them to go. No, after the simulation, you talk about it. You discuss their experiences, what they've learned, the results, everything. You discuss with them, and then you tell them how it is going to be applied in a real life situation. So these are the things, or these are the points that the things that you provide when you are dealing with computer-based simulation and animation. The next activity is summaries and consensus groups. Summaries and consensus groups. So this is a very uncomplicated but effective online activity. Here students are either asked either individually or as a group to summarize some aspect of the course of a course's activities, discussions, or readings. So we can have a discussion, we can have an activity, we can give you some reading materials to go and read. After that, you summarize what you read, you summarize the activity, you summarize the discussion. So this can be done in groups, or it can be done individually. So that's for summaries and consensus group. Now when you have a class of about 50, as I said, it's better to put them into what groups. Now different groups, it means that different people are discussing either the same thing or different things. So in the end, because everybody wants to know what's happening in the other groups, you have to set up a presentation for all the other groups, so that each group will come and then share the idea or share what they've learned with the class. So you have to set up a presentation for all the groups. Now when you come to consensus groups specifically, they are given a particular topic, a reading material, or a project, something of a sort. Now this project particularly people will have different ideas, different perceptions, different suggestions about it. But with consensus groups, you expect that they all brainstorm and then they come up with the same idea. So they brainstorm and come out with a common solution, which will obviously be presented to the whole class in any format that they want. Either they want to present it using video, audio, PowerPoint slides, plain text, whatever format they want to present in, they can do that. So that's just about the summaries and then the consensus groups. The next activity we are going to look at is experience-based practicum or lab assignments. This is where students are assigned with real-world activities to undertake. During these activities, students should submit a mandatory or obligatory weekly or monthly report on the online platform. Students they can also do make occasional postings whenever they need feedback from the instructors or the classmates. Now with a mandatory or obligatory weekly or monthly post reports, instructors and classmates, they get the opportunity to review and share their experiences. Students are also asked to critique their reports and then exchange their experiences with their colleagues. Now, online lab simulations, they are they recreate the physical labs that we have in our schools online, so that students who are not in the physical lab can still have they can still do some simple science experiments. So even though they are not in a physical lab, there is a lab simulation online that has all the apparatus, all the acids, the solutions and everything present over there, and then they can just do some simple science experiments. So it's mostly used for science students, but there are other versions of online lab simulations as well. What other lecturers do is that if they know that they have a nearby their students are near maybe a school, a university, they can arrange for their students to go and use their labs for learning. Or if there is no any nearby campus, then they can just set up a video conference, and he will be doing the experiments, the how do you call it, the lab experiments, and then through video conferencing the students will also be observing the experiments that he's doing. So that is that with the online practicum and lab assignments. The next activity is reflective activities. This is when students are allowed to use texts, images, audios, videos, and links to web resources to create a reflective piece. Now, a reflective piece is something that you can revisit and then go through, see how you did it, when you started, how you started, the processes that it went through, and how it ended, where you ended. Now when you do this, it makes you relive whatever you did or whatever you've done, and check the errors, the mistakes, the how to upgrade it, and also that next time when you're doing the same thing again, you can come up with a better version of it. Now this is very important because It encourages thoughtful, focused consideration and a critique of a topic. So, as I said, you get to know your shortcomings, the things you didn't do well, where it didn't go well, you improve upon it, and then next time when you're doing the same thing, you do it better. All right. Now, it's also allows the students to measure their progress in learning over time. So the progress, oh, here this time I didn't do well, the next time I'll improve upon it, I'll do it this way. So they monitor the progress with time. They monitor the progress of learning. And then the last thing about reflective activity is that classmates are encouraged to critique and give feedback on their on the reflective pieces. So I get my classmates' work, I critique it, I give better solutions, I give solutions to improve. My classmates also gets mine, does the same thing, on and on and on. So you see that the ideas and then the feedbacks will be great, and then each and everyone can improve upon it. So that's for reflective activities. The next thing is the next activity is just discussion. So just discussion. Now here we already know what discussion is already. So we're just going to look at some few rules that we have to follow. Even for just discussion, there are some few rules that we have to follow. So the first one talks about coverage. Now coverage, you as a lecturer, you're supposed to provide the student with the opportunity for questions. Even if you are asking your students to read or research on a topic area, you should still provide some way for them to address issues that comes with what the topic. Now the next thing is objective. Now the discussion you are doing, what is your objective? What are you expecting from your students? Now you need to be able to determine the level of thinking or the instructional objective that you are aiming for, whether recall, analysis, even critiquing. Some discussions, they just you do the discussion and then you allow the student to just critique. You point out the wrong things in it and you find solutions to it. That's just critiquing. So you should be able to determine the level of thinking, whatever, or the instructional objective that you're expecting from the discussion. The last thing about just discussion is spur of the moment. Now discussions, most of the times they follow a particular pattern, but you shouldn't, in as much as it follows a pattern, you shouldn't fear, or you shouldn't be so rigid, so that when there is the need for you to bring up a new thread of discussion, you won't do that. You should be able to create new topic threads when it's necessary. So that's also for discussions. So these are the three things that we have to follow when we are having our discussions. The next activity is scenarios and case studies. Now scenarios present us with concrete situations that can be used to stimulate analysis, require students to imagine how they might respond to a particular set of circumstances. Now they can be scenarios, they can be problem-based learning, in which a specific challenge is presented and students are asked to find approaches to solve the issue. So that's basically scenarios and case study. The next thing is that they can transform abstract or theoretical discussions into a concrete problem solving skill. That's one good thing about scenarios. And that another thing is that they act as a valuable tool for bringing multiple perspectives to a problem. So when the problem is presented, different people have different approaches of solving this particular problem, and for all you know, all the approaches might work, or most of the approaches might work. So we get different perspectives to a single problem or a particular problem. The case studies, to be specific, they call for analysis on the application of principles that has been taught or that has been learned in class. So the applications, the principles, the analysis that we learn in class, when the case study is presented, we then apply all these things, and then we find solutions to the case study. Now, a case study can be real or hypothetical, and it can it can either be presented as a clear-cut problem. So in the case study, the problem will be stated, or the problem will not be stated, and then the student will be asked to find the problem and then find solution to it at the same time. So that's the form that a case study can take. In case of scenarios and case study, we can access online resources from our case studies, or we can also use videos, slideshows, tools to create our own case study and our own scenarios for the students. All right, so that's okay. So as I said, online resources for your case study. So that's for case studies. The next one is peer editing and review. Very simple, very simple. Here we allow classmates and colleagues to critique each other's work by editing them, reviewing them, and then evaluating them. It's very beneficial because we students get the benefits of a perspective other than the instructors, so they don't get stuck to one perspective every day, what the teacher thinks, every day what the instructor thinks. No, this time around they get perspectives from their own colleagues, because they are critiquing their colleagues' work, so they get different perspectives other than their instructors. This peer editing is most effective when instructors provide a defined criteria for evaluating and editing. You don't just tell them to critique, but then you have to give them criteria for which that they are going to use to critique their colleagues' works. And then the last thing is that to prevent bias, to prevent students being biased, whether adding more marks or reducing the marks, whatever review that they do, you the lecturer, you have to grade the reviewing of the students' work, so that they won't be biased. Because if they know that after reviewing this work, my instructor will also review my review, then I would have better work reviewing their colleagues' work. Now, the next activity is activity involving guest speakers. Activities involving guest speakers. Now, you for variety's sake, you the instructor, you can decide to bring in a guest speaker for a period of several days or a week, and during which time he or she will post some materials online and be available for questions. So if if the guest speaker will not be available for questions, you, the instructor, you can simply post the materials. You can simply post the materials from the speaker in an asynchronous class forum, either in plain text, PowerPoint, or audio, or even with video, so that your students will have access to these materials and then read them or even watch them. Now, in some cases, the guest speakers can also be available for a live or real-time chat or video conferencing. In the case of live session, you can post the guest speakers materials ahead of time so that students can read and prepare for their questions and answers. You can also ask for the questions to be asked from the students. You can ask them to post the questions to you so that you go through, and then you make sure that they ask relevant questions. So prior to the chat, you ask them to send you their questions. You go through the questions. You make sure they are appropriate before the time comes. The next thing is that during the chat or the video conferencing, you might want to introduce the speaker yourself, set some ground rules for the students to follow, and then you also moderate the entire session. So that's one best thing to do. But in case you don't have a guest speaker readily available, you may be able to find a virtual guest speakers through the medium of video and audio resources existing online. So you can go to YouTube and look for a video of a particular topic that you are discussing. Now this video is obviously going to be a different speaker, which can serve as your virtual guest speaker. Download it and then make it available for your students to read or to watch or to listen. So you can use video, YouTube videos, or you can use any other podcasts that are available. You download the audio, you make it available to your students to listen. That should serve as your virtual guest speaker. So that's basically how activities involving guest speakers is about. The last activity we are going to talk about is using the web as a resource. Now, there are numerous documents, databases, archives, and collections of files online that you can use as your activities. So you go online, you download them, you make it available to your students for them to examine. Now, before you can download these files or resources for your students to use, you have to examine it yourself. Whenever you use the web as part of an assignment or activity, you should make sure to examine the material yourself before using it or before assigning it to your class. It is very, very important. Now, in evaluating the website, these are some of the things that you have to look for. These are guidelines that you have to follow. The first thing is to check for the site sponsorship. Second thing, you check for authorship of any article, if they have any article that they've been referenced in or that they've written. It's also important. The next one is you check the relevance of the material to your topic. For the material you are downloading, it might have the same heading, but they are talking about two different things. They are talking about separate things altogether. So you have to check the content, how relevant it is to your topic. You have to check that one as well. And then you check how well the site is designed. If it's not well designed, you don't have to put your students through stress. Let them go and search and search and search, and they won't even find their way around the particular website. So you don't have to go for that. And then the last one is you check how difficult is it to navigate to the site. If it's not really easy for your students to find information on that particular website, it's not advisable to use. It's not advisable to use at all. So you have to check that as well. Now, in using the website as resources, we have several, or we have variety of useful websites that we can access. So the first one is collection and portals. Now, collection and portals, these are they are websites that keeps records of photos, speeches, essays, articles, arts, documents, recordings, and so on and so forth. So you can visit such websites and then look at the speech that is relevant to your topic. You download it and you use it in your assignment or your activity. As simple as that. The next one is online magazines and news. The same way, we have websites that keeps records of major news sources about finance, literature, art, culture, sports, economy, and so on and so forth. So if you're doing something about economy, you can go there, find the news, download it, use it in your activities or for your students to examine. As simple as that. Number 3, we have commercial sites, which can also come in handy if you are doing the business school. Maybe in the business school you are doing something about a particular brand. You can visit their commercial website, get information about the brand, and use it for your activities. We also have personal sites which can help, and then we have online classroom materials. You can visit other online classrooms, the materials that they've posted there. You can pick it, use it as an activity for your students to do the same thing. We also have image collections. We have sites that specialize in sharing videos. An example, a typical example is YouTube. If you want a video concerning your topic, you go to YouTube, you search for the video, download, and use it for your activities. You are good to go. We also have podcasts and vodcasts, where you can get audios and video files for your topics. And then we also have wikis that have been worked on by people, variety of subject areas. So you go there, you pick the one that's in relation to your topic, then you use it. So that is that. These are the some of the useful websites that we can access for our resources when we are using the web as our resource for our activities. So this brings us to the lesson on student activities in an online environment. Stay tuned for the next lesson that we're going to talk about, and thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe and that you like the video. All right, thank you.